Can you hear us okay?
Now I can hear you.
Okay, all right. Please, you can go to our intro. We got everybody here. Oh, the noise in the background. Mic checking. Everyone here all right?
Oh, hold on.
All right. Uhuru. More power to the people who free the land.
I can hear you.
We want to proud to welcome two very special guests. Thank everybody up front from wherever we're checking in from in the Pan-African world. And we get folks checking in from somewhere everywhere. I want both of our guests to appreciate that this platform is as international as it ought to be. We often get folks from across the big pond, the Caribbean, and Latin America checking in on what we do. By way of introduction, I'm Zaid Muhammad. I'm the lead organizer for the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee. I want to welcome you to Revolutionary Fourth Sundays for the Centennial Malcolm X. Every fourth Sunday, we will be having an important online conversation to lift up this important legacy of struggle that Malcolm anchored in his own unique and special way. Today, we're going to look at the age-old question of reparations. I think it's timely to do in a time like this because the question of reparations is one of those issues that defies our community's tendency to be leaning one way or another in terms of their general electoral sensibility, right? This is not a Democratic Party issue. It's not a Republican Party issue. It's a human rights issue, right? And we don't care who the president is or who the Congress is. We want our reparations. They stole us. They stole us. They owe us, right? We want what's ours. And we have two veterans on that. This conversation, and I want to introduce Roger Wareham of the December 12th International Secretariat and one of our warrior lawyers in the courts and in the streets, and one of our long distance runners in struggle. Very honored to have beloved Chairman Omala Yeshitali of the African People's Socialist Party and the International Uhuru Movement. Let me just frame this way, and then I'll do a brief libations statement, and we'll go in and do what we need to do. Roger, I've been wanting you, if you can remember when the anniversary of the World Conference on Racism came up, I was trying to figure out we were trying to work out a time to do this conversation. Then we were just coming out of COVID and navigating these new spaces, and we couldn't quite get our calendar together. But one of the things that came out of that epic journey was the film done by the drama network called Durban 400, right?
Yep.
And that was a very important pivotal moment for the reparations movement. But reparations has had a number of pivotal moments. We're in a space recently where we see the question breaking in to multiracial spaces, something that didn't know we were going to see for a long time. But that Chairman O'Malley, right, and the work that he's done with his formations, they had been trying to break into that space with the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and under with people like the great Penny Hess uh, some years ago. So we, clear on that need, they charted that out the Sankofa principle. Look back at those important moments in order to look forward in terms of lifting up those questions, which way forward, and trying to continue the forward motion of reparations in spite of what's happening in Washington or not happening in Washington. We want to try and do this in a tight hour. We want to respect both of your important demands on each of your time, and we really cherish to have you here. Right? Ordinarily, we would begin with a spotlight on our political prisoners. We were particularly going to spotlight Imam Jamil El Amin, right? And Chairman O'Malley, just certainly you need to have some comments on that because both of y'all had SNCC ties in real time, right? We have our contacts were not able to come forward today from the Imam Jamil Action Network as we anticipated and hoped. But let's just say several things about his situation first and foremost. That beloved long distance runner, freedom fighter, now has stage 4 cancer. And the support that he needs now has a urgency that is as urgent and couldn't be more urgent than ever. And this particular platform and organization, as a part of our ongoing work around the support of our political prisoners, we will certainly be blasting out and doing our share of the mobilization to build that urgent support. So we just want to say that up front. And we're interested in following the work of the Imam Jamil Action Network is simply the Imam Jamil Action Network.org, right? There's a film that's supposed to be developed by the Imam's son. We're trying to support that, and we're hoping we can do that mid-season this year. This year, thinking around the July season. We want to develop as a touch point what we're calling the Malcolm X Human Rights Film Festival, where we would like to host that and open that in both of our spaces in New York and New Jersey. So that's something to look forward to. All eyes and ears should be up for Imam Jamil El Amin. Also, want to express my gratitude, especially to Chairman O'Malley, because just a few minutes ago, he was in the dangerous crosshairs of a federal uh, attempt to really take him out of circulation. He is the lead defendant of the Uhuru 3 crazy situation that did not happen under Trump, by the way, right? This happened at the hand of your friends in the Democratic Party, brothers and sisters, right? And we're just very grateful again in a double way to have him present because his situation could be very different had we not done what we needed to do to rally support for the Uhuru Free. So both my comrades, I thank you both supremely. Let me just do a quick, modest libation statement. That is our practice. Lift up some of the ancestors of Malcolm and our organization and some of our reparations ancestors. So let me begin as we usually do. For the four directions, the north, the south, the east, the west, we say, Ibaye, lift up the name of our revolutionary forefather to ground us in this particular endeavor. We lift up his mother, bold Garveyite Louise Langdon Norton Little, and some of us will be going to her Grenada as a part of the centennial activities in a few minutes, right? The same Grenada that would later give us the New Jewel movement, an important, albeit brief, moment and struggle for our people in the Caribbean, right? We lift up that tradition and how that tradition has emerged from that place in the diaspora. For Louise Langdon Little, we say Ibaye, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.
Hey,
For father, the bold and brave Earl Little, straight out of Georgia, strong and fearless, defying all kinds of attempts on his and his family's life, defending the honor and doing the work of Mr. Garvey in his time, and ultimately costing him his life in 1931 for Malcolm's brave, tall father, Earl Little. We say, Ibaye, Ashe, Ibaye, Ashe, 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 Ashe. It is big sister, underappreciated, but important to him in every step of his development, had his back personally and financially. Those epic trips were abroad were not paid by grants from some neoliberal corporation or foundation. They were paid for by his enterprising, courageous big sister Ella Little Collins. For his sister Ella Little Collins, we say Ibaye, Ashe, Ibaye, Ashe. For his queen, Dr. Betty Bahia Shabazz, serious Pan Africanist in her own right, and an inspiration to Black women all over the world as she tried to step forward in the wake of losing her husband while raising 6 children on her own. For Dr. Betty Bahia Shabazz, we say, Ibaye, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. A couple ancestors from our organization, our founding chair, former political prisoner, and New African pioneer, Baba Herman Ferguson. We say Ibaye. For the incredible internationalist and legendary disarmament champion and peacemaker and bearer of international human solidarity, Yuri Kuchiyama, we say Ibaye, Ashe, Ashe. And some of our reparations ancestors. On our page, we lifted up the great Callie House. Callie House, underappreciated, unsung, but the first to develop a mass support for the question of reparations in our bridge from the 19th century to the 20th century. And if you think folks are not on the other side are not taking reparations seriously, ask yourself the question, not only why did they come at the Uhuru Three, but why did they lock up Callie House? They locked up Callie House for her work around reparations. So we lift up Callie House, Ibaye, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Queen Mother Moore, the most famous and our famous grounding ancestor from the 20th century, bold Garveyite and strong champion in a number of left circles and a big influence on so many of us in the modern iterations of this work. Most of us who do this work seriously on this question have had our own touches with the incomparable Queen Mother Moore. For Queen Mother Audley Moore, we say Ibaye, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. And we will wind with that, the north, the south, the east, the west. We say Ibaye, Ashe, 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 Ashe. Oh, we could have gone more on that, but we need to get to work. Thank you both, Roger and Chairman
yeah.
Miles. Both really appreciate both of your time, leaning in with us. We all are doing in some incredibly important things. Roger and I have done things together on the streets of New York in ways that we can, we got some scarred memories, right? We
Got
came
that right.
together, you know. And O'Malley, sir, I've been following you and your example for so long, and as the resident elder, I'm going to start with you, Bob O'Malley, in this way. I don't know if you can remember this, but I want to say this was probably in the late '80s, early '90s. There was an event at the Schomburg that you came to, and one of the things that you said that ticked off some folks, but it was correct and mature that needed to be said is that it was a conversation that included the assessing of our struggle at its high point in the 60s, how that was interrupted by COINTELPRO. You were the only one that dare said we have to face the fact that our forces were defeated at that moment and required some serious regrouping and some honest reassessments. Everybody wasn't appreciative of those remarks. I never forgot that. And I said, he's right.
Yeah.
And we need to tell no lies, claim no easy victories, right? So I just wanted to put a personal footnote on that, sir, because I never forgot that, and that landed on me. And I'm saying that as somebody who's worked around our political prisoners for almost 40 years, right? And trying to, bring folks along on that, because we still got some, and we're bound to have some new ones the way this stuff is going, right? That you got to be totally honest in how you assess your objective conditions and organize in accord to those conditions. I just wanted to lift that up. Now, y'all heard all my background and my intro that I just laid out. I mean, back in 1990, 82, I'm going to say 92, 1982, you pushed forward an important international conversation around reparations that needed to happen, and it seeded a lot of where we're at. I want you to unpack that. This is a teaching platform. We have a very young audience for the most part. I want you to unpack that history, right? How you got to that moment, right? Right? And move ahead and look at why that kind of historical perspective on our organizing is important. Why don't you start there and open us up with that?
Well, thank you, comrade. First of all, what I want to say is that I want to really express appreciation to you, comrade Zaid and Roger. And I don't know if Roger remembers when we first started doing reparations work together. It would have been in 1982 when we were building for the tribunal, the World Tribunal on Reparations for African People. And we were organizing throughout New York, and there was one of the most influential African organization in New York had decided to boycott the tribunal because they felt like it should have been featuring a person who they thought to be a very important person. And so, while we thought the person was important too, we didn't think that the reparations tribunal was for the purpose of putting him forward, but actually reparations. And Roger, I don't remember if it would have been D12. It seemed like I remember Sunrise Collective as well.
Yeah, Sunrise Collective. Yeah, not D12 didn't start till '87. Yeah.
Right. And so you worked with us even during this time where this boycott was happening, and we had a successful tribunal. And you were one of the persons who came from Sunrise Collective to participate in some of the pre tribunal conferences and hearings that we were having all over New York to build for that. And I don't know if you remember that at all.
You have a better memory than me. And I'm younger than you.
Yeah. And I wanted to say that. And secondly, I thought it was important to mention that we started doing reparations work in the mid 1970s, and it heated up for us during a mobilization that was sponsored primarily by the Puerto Rican Socialist Party and some white leftists who were trying to build what they call a mass organizing committee. They were trying to build a new party, but the thing that made us go to Philadelphia, where this was happening, 1976, it was a bicentennial on. Say it again.
I said, "Oh God, yes."
Yeah, it was a bicentennial, and they put forth the idea of a bicentennial without colonies. That's what the Puerto Rican Socialist Party was pushing. So we said, yeah, the colonial question, because the colonial question had been pushed aside with the military defeat of the anti-colonizer forces. That's with Malcolm. That's with the Black Panther Party was a shell of itself, even in 1972. When we were doing this. And most of us who were fighting against colonialism had been pushed aside by this anti-racism kind of politic that liquidate the question of political power for those who were colonized. And so that was one of the reasons that we went there. And that was one of the places where we were pushing the struggle for against for reparations. Of course, and then we were hearing from white leftists and things like that that the reparations movement or position was from a lunatic fringe. That this a lunatic figure, you must be out of your mind to talk about reparations, right? So we concluded that we were going to make reparations a household word. And I remember being in an important conference in New York. People like Imari Baraka was there. I think Chokwe Lumumba may have been on that platform with us, and other people who are in the Northeast, in particular in New York, would be more from Masamela. They were all a part of that, and Dorothy Lewis, who was a really important force too, and we talked to her and said, we're going to do this thing. We're going to actually build a reparations, a mass movement for reparation, because we think the fundamental thing that's missing is the people. So we had individuals and some groups who would talk about reparations, et cetera, but the people had not been brought into the process. And we thought that it was really important to bring the people into the process for reparations. And so that was the basis of creating the World Tribunal right there in New York, to get people there. And for 11 years following that, we were having tribunals in different places. And that's where Leonard Jeffries won his wings and what have you. Afeni Shakur was there. You mentioned the brother from Patrice Lumumba Coalition, his brother, the cultural force. Lumumba's brother, Kwame.
Right.
Yeah, he was there. And so it was an extraordinary group of people who came to participate in this process. We did this with the objective of creating a reparations movement that would give most of us who were for political independence, for self-determination, a common collective organization that we could participate in. But this is something we say, everybody unites with this. Let's create an organization based on reparations and pull us all together. It's not my organization, it's everybody's organization. That's the objective that we had. And because all of us believed in that, and so we won't be tied up with basic ideological differences. We unite around the work and work to build reparations. Anyway, that was our objective. It didn't happen that way, but we did that work and initiate that process. And I want to say that one thing that compelled us to do reparation work in the 1980s is Ronald Wilson Reagan who was, became the president. He, was pushing this whole line about welfare queens and the country, and the ideologues represent the country had put forth the notion that somehow African people were this economic drag on the success of the population of the United States, et cetera, that people were tired of having to give welfare to Black people, et cetera. And so we felt like taking on the reparations question would take African people from the kind of demoralization we were experiencing. This is where we saw people like Moynihan become important and decide that, they were defining the problem as us. We were the problem. We were the basis for our own poverty and oppression, et cetera. The system wasn't doing anything to us. And so that was one of the things that really inspired us to take this on. So I just wanted to make, those kind of observations. And the United States government attacked us militarily. They had done the same thing to Roger some years ago, and forces now part of the D12, they hit them hard. I forgot the number of charges that they had laid on them. But I think it's important to say that one of the reasons that they hit us was because of the work that we did a campaign in St. Petersburg, Florida. We ran 2 candidates for local office and put reparations on the ballot. We were running candidates around reparations. And this is the first time Obama got involved in a local election. He came out in opposition to us and supporting the white candidate who was against us and against the reparations demand. So we feel like it's really important that the government attacked us. They attacked us for talking. They attacked us for that and for other things that we were done talking. The fact that we had put the genocide convention back up, and we had collected 130,000 signatures of people uniting with the demand that we were making that the United States government should be taken before the World Court for violating the United Nations Convention on Genocide as regards to African people. And I'm saying this because this was happening at a time where the United States was beginning to promote itself as the great democracy at the helm of this contest between Democrats and autocrats. And the United States represents the democracy in the world. It was in this struggle that it was making with Russia, with China, with various other contending forces at the time. And so they attacked us and they put us on trial. And part of what I think is important to understand about that trial in this instance is they intended to criminalize Black people criticizing our treatment by the United States government. And the fact is that the reparations is a fundamental criticism of the United States government treatment to African people. And that's part of the significance of that. So I just wanted to say that and appreciate again being here with you, Comrade Zaid, with Comrade Roger, and also the fact that we're talking about Malcolm X, which is representative of a continuation of the ideological trajectory that our struggle has been on for complete independence, control of our own lives, as opposed to this kind of anti-racism politics that locks us into the states of begging to be allowed to participate in the system of our oppressor.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Word to that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Continuity indeed. Attorney at War.
Yeah.
You and your comrades were central in the coming together of what became the Durban 400. In of all places, Durban, South Africa.
Right.
Just
Right.
a few years into a post-apartheid period, right?
Right. Right.
On
Right.
the verge of having this conversation finally being established in the international arena, building on the work that Chairman O'Malley just described, is that transatlantic slave trade, not just the transatlantic slave trade, colonialism, and apartheid are indeed crimes against humanity for which reparations is due. And of course, something happened in the white world that deflected that conversation for a moment. That being the uh, the uh, the touching up of American soil with the World Trade Center attack. But nevertheless, the gelling of that conversation moving that firmly into the international arena was set forward from that base of work. Take us back then and take us forward, if you will.
Well, and it's a continuation in terms of what O'Malley was talking about. And it came from, Malcolm saying we got to put our stuff. We have to put Black people's struggle in the international arena. We keep restricting it to the United States. We're shooting ourselves in the foot because they make the rules. They keep changing the rules. Anytime we get close to achieving whatever they say equality is, they would change it. So it was from that framework that we began um, doing consistent international work, consistent in the sense that we started going to the United Nations regularly from 1989 through today, and took up the issue in the United Nations really after we've been going there about 4 years in 1993. We saw that a vehicle for getting the reparations issue international was to have a world conference, to have the UN call a world conference against racism. And in that world conference, we saw that that was going to be the opportunity to really push the international nature of reparations and then just to blow it up on the international level. So we began organizing for that. We lobbied, we pushed. Of course, the Western countries were against even having a world conference. Eventually, they agreed to it so long as its title was no longer against racism, but racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerances. In other words, every human rights violation in the world would now be covered by this World Conference. Nevertheless, our our view was to go there with three issues. One was the Declaration of the Transatlantic Slave Trade, slavery, colonialism, and apartheid as crimes against humanity, reparations for the descendants of the victims of those crimes, and international recognition of the economic basis of racism. That racism was not simply a psychological aberration, but came out of a need for capitalism and developing capitalism to justify how good Christians could enslave human beings. For you just dehumanize them, you don't make them that. So our task, our goal was uh, to take to have those three issues come up. We went to the UN when they're having world conferences. They have two prep coms in different areas. There was one in Chile, there was one in Dakar, there was one in Vienna. There was another one. I'm trying to remember. We went to those. Our goal was to get support from Africans wherever we were, because everybody has their own experience with racism. But our task was to get everybody to put those three issues at the top of their agenda. And of course, the most important thing was to organize the countries of the United Nations to support it. Long story short, we took 400 people to Durban, South Africa, mainly from the United States. But more than that, we had worked with the blacks in the diaspora, Africans in the diaspora, in the Caribbean, in South and Central America, and on the continent to develop a whole group of people who were going to be lobbying for that. And we were successful in doing that. That the African countries stood up, they stood firm. The Caribbean countries, most of them did. They came under tremendous pressure from the West. The United States position from the time that the first meeting around this World Conference Against Racism was held was that if there's any mention of the word they didn't even use the word reparations, they said compensation, but this is the same thing they're talking about. If that was going to be on the agenda, the United States of America was not going to participate in this World Conference. So they threatened that from Jump Street,
They were.
and they thought
Mhm.
that would um, make, particularly South Africa, they were putting a lot of pressure on South Africa, would make them back down. But the African countries stood firm during the World Conference. I mean, we don't have time to go through all this, but people should, if they have not already seen, look at the Durban 400, because not
Good
only
for
is
them.
it
Good for
a,
them.
a recitation of what happened there, but it's almost like a handbook in terms of how do you organize internationally to get your agenda across. And of course, O'Malley knows that because he's a representative of an organization that has ties around the world. And so that's what happened. They backed off the question of declaring colonialism and apartheid, but they definitely the Durban Declaration and Program of Action was the first international declaration that recognized the transatlantic slave trade and slavery as crimes against humanity. Reparations were due. We were coming back to organize on the ground for that, and 2 days after we landed, there were the attacks in New York and Washington, D.C. on 9/11. Nevertheless, we continued organizing. The following year, we held the first national demonstration of reparations on the Mall, Washington, D.C., on Garvey's birthday, August 17th,
Yes. Yes.
2002. Uh, and we don't have time to go through all that, but I think the importance of what O'Malley's been doing, what we've been doing, is we understand reparations is in the final analysis for Black folks here. It's a national issue that the United States government has got to address, but also we understand that reparations is really a Pan-African issue. It's an issue that affects Africans wherever white folks dropped us in the Western Hemisphere, and so those are our natural allies in that, and of course the question of the role that Africa is going to play in that. So that's the perspective from which we approach reparations. Um, there are a lot of reparations, and I think the point O'Malley made, which was most important, was what Durban did and the Durban 400 and the whole motion was it put reparations in the popular consciousness of our people. Because
Indeed.
reparations is not going to happen by legislation if there's no popular push. It's not going to happen by legislation in over what it's been 30 years in Congress that hasn't happened. But the most important force always are the people. And I think that that's the role that we and Molly's organization, other people have played, is that not only did we take the issue of reparations, that taking it from the perspective that, oh, it's a fringe lunatic, we made it so that people who could really see that not only do they owe us a debt, but they have to pay it.
Yeah.
It's not begging, it's not charity. They stole us, they sold us, they owe us. And I think people have now moved past that this is something that's not possible. It's really now at a point where how can we actually achieve it?
Right on. Right on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let
Yeah.
me acknowledge a couple things in the middle of what you said, right? And if you can remember, Roger, that 1993, we had that march that we did on the UN on May
Yeah,
19th. That,
yeah,
that
yeah,
lifting up,
yeah.
our struggle for human rights, lifting up reparations. And what happened? The pigs vamped. We got attacked
They
by
moved
the
on us.
police.
Yeah,
That's
they
right,
moved on us.
right.
That's
So,
right.
for all those naysayers out here who like, yeah, they ain't gonna never take us serious about reparations, they have been taking us very serious about reparations. We need to take reparations more seriously so we can
Got that.
continue to move this needle further ahead. I want to ask each of you quick, because we, we're all talking about reparations in a Pan-African paradigm, and that's important, right? The right wing has propped up a set of uh, uh, distractors that have tried to do everything but have us talk about reparations in a Pan African paradigm. Before we go to the heart question, that which way forward, and given where we are now in reparations, each of you, the state of Pan Africanism, right? And Pan Africanism, is not exempt from class struggle, right? We remember the two camps in the
That's
early
right.
days of the OAU
Right.
around Pan Africanism. The
Liberia and the
state
Cairo.
of
Right.
Pan Africanism right now. Each of you, your thoughts, Chairman Omar.
Well, first of all, I want to express appreciation for the intervention by Comrade Roger. And we were there in Durban with you. And in
Right.
fact, the first organization we built on the ground in South Africa was then, when we went to Durban then. And we're doing great work there. And reparations is arising from our work there in South Africa as a
Mhm.
consequence of that trip. I mean, it's on the ground. It's not protesting, from the outside, but people are actually, we are on the inside. And that takes me to the issue of the reason that we're talking about reparations in New York and St. Louis is because of an attack on Africa. And I think it's really important to say it was an attack on Africa that got us to New York, that got us to St. Louis. And so, in fact, the world economy that we are affected by today is one that has its origin in Portugal attacking Africa some 600 years ago, and initiating this process of colonial slavery and dispersing Africans throughout the world, and by which in doing so, they dispersed us throughout the world, but they also dispersed the African Revolution throughout the world. Because everywhere you look where Black people are, we suffer as a consequence of that assault on Africa. We don't have a problem in Jamaica because of something that has its origin in Jamaica or in Cuba or in Puerto Rico or in St. Louis, Missouri, or New York. It's because it has its origin in that initial attack that was made on Africa. And I think it's really important for us to understand that.
Last big picture, yes, sir.
And sometimes when you look at reparations from the Africa side of the question, we have to count. I think out of the Caribbean, wasn't it the Caribbean people who I used to know this brother with used to be with Gap. But anyway, they calculated something like 130 some odd trillion dollars owed to African people because of in reparations. But the fact is that if you calculated just what is owed to Africa alone, and I'm not talking about this as a way of isolating the fact that we're talking about reparations in Brooklyn and we're talking about reparations in St. Louis. I'm not trying to isolate and abstract that out of that. But if you look at what is due to Africa alone, and this is something I think is crucially important, is you can calculate in part what's due to Africa by what we have done in all these other places, when Africans have done in all these other places. The fact is that economic life is for the purpose of producing and reproducing life itself. And the attack on Africa took us out of the process of primarily producing life for ourselves. Now we're producing life for the colonizers. So when you look at the situation in Amsterdam, or you look at New York, or all these other places, and see the difference in the conditions there and what you will see in Sierra Leone, you're looking at a difference that's a consequence of them ripping off resources from Africa. African people in New York, African people in Mississippi, African people in all these other places where wealth would have gone, genius would have gone to Africa now as something that's been stolen from us. So I think this is a real serious question. And yes, we don't characterize ourselves as Pan-Africanists because, like you said, Pan-Africanists can be over here and over there. They can be right, they can be left. We're African internationalists. And in that definition, we're talking about communism. We're talking about the African working class and the African liberation under a process that's a consequence of the seizure of political power by the African working class, et cetera. So that's how we think this major thing we're looking for. We appreciate Nkrumah. We appreciate Lumumba. We appreciate so many of these other forces. Yes. But we're not going to build this united Africa, borderless Africa that Nkrumah talked about by going to the top, by going to the leaders there. It's going to come from the bottom. And so we have to build a capacity. That's what we think is really important. And I also want to just appreciate the initiative because we were watching when you were doing that work and when you developed an NGO. We were watching, Roger, when you developed that NGO and debated, considered whether or not we should try to do that kind of thing, to do UN, United Nations work, and appreciate very much the fact that you opened the door.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And created that. Yeah, Uhuru.
Sure.
Uhuru. Yes, sir. Roger, go ahead.
I just wanted to add this in terms of, because I think the reparations initiative is Pan-African. I think the broader issue is the need for more Pan-African unity and solidarity, particularly in this period of time, in terms of this all-out attack on we're always the default scapegoat, and what's consolidating in the U.S. and Europe in terms of just the whole thing against immigrants. And this past Friday, we had a rally out in front of the U.S. mission to the United Nations. And it was really in response to two things. One, March 21st is the anniversary of the Sharpeville massacre, which is something that sort of has fallen out of the Pan-African calendar. The UN has renamed it
we
something
can't let
else.
that happen. That's right.
But Sharpeville is very important, and I'm sure for your listening audience, most of them know that was the day in 1960 when South African security forces killed at least 69 Black folks who were protesting the apartheid regime, and that they were being forced to carry passbooks, identity books, in order to move around the country.
And it led to the armed phase of the struggle against apartheid.
It blew up in terms of the international support and awareness of what was happening, support for South Africa, right? And it catalyzed the armed struggle with the ANC and the PAC. The other thing was that this past week, the South African ambassador to the United States had participated in a conference where he made some comments that were really kind of implying or suggesting that Donald Trump was a white supremacist. however you want to take that. The response to the U.S. government was completely like off the hook because ambassadors say a lot of things, but they took it as a personal insult. They labeled him as a persona non grata, which meant that he no longer had any diplomatic status in the States, and he was told to be out of Dodge by Friday the 21st. So that we found out about that Wednesday, and we called for this rally on Friday, and many organizations, including yours organization, uh,
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
MP Dumb, African peoples, all of those, all we got many organizations that came out, I mean, and supported it. And it was very important because it was a Pan-African statement that, in sort of like reminiscent of African Liberation Support
Yes,
Day, the
Mhm.
first one in
yes,
1972 when we were in DC. But it was important to make a statement. And at the same time, so we were out there, we were passing out information, we were on the loudspeaker, and uh, there were a lot of women, African women who were at the UN because this was the last day of the Commission on the Status of Women, and
mm,
so there were women from all across the continent there. So we were able to give that information, let them see that Black folks in the U.S. were fighting around our common interests. So I think that's very important, and it'll have a beneficial effect as we go on and we continue the struggle for reparations.
Uhuru.
absolutely, 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 absolutely. Appreciate that big and that word about that attack on the South African rep, that was not that fell under the radar for a lot of folks. So that was really very timely, and I'm sure it was well appreciated by our folks on that side of the water as well. That's huge. That's huge. And right on again, straight ahead to our comrades in the December 12th movement for taking that step and putting our folks out there on that important uh, day. Now, here we are now. Whatever's worth, we
We
got
are.
the lunatic fringe and one of the most backward sectors of the white elite at the helm of the car of imperialism, right? But that aside, we also in places just recently we're in multiracial places. We're in places where uh, municipalities in certain states are daring to have conversations around reparations. We are in a different space. With the work, all that work that you're talking about, and all that work that a lot of us participated in over the years has led to some fresh groundbreaking,
Hmm.
right? So
True that.
given it, right, and I'm gonna start with you here, Roger, because you know the work we all did in New York, right? In fact, I was talking to Charles right before I got on what you got with y'all today. Charles Barron, that is, right? Um,
There's only one Charles.
there's only one Charles Barron. Thank
Right.
God. He
Everybody
is on our
everybody knows who you're
side and
talking
our
about.
ride or die, absolutely, right? Uh,
Yeah.
from New York and those other spaces where we're seeing these fresh developments, right? Start with New York, Roger, and Chairman, you jump in right behind him.
Well, Charles Barron, I mean, one, we've been doing the work in New York for a long time, but what Charles Barron did, he took advantage of the fact that he was an elected official and did what black elected officials should be
Ought to do.
doing, have not been doing generally, but need to be doing, which was put forward a resolution, a bill for reparations in New York first, and he did it in two places. He did it in the city council when he was there, and also in the New York State Assembly. He put forward a bill for there to be a New York State Commission on Reparations to deal with the fact that New York was a slave state, quiet as it was kept. So he put forward a bill, and his was unique in the sense that his bill provided for the commission that was established to be majority based on composed of members from civil society or grassroots organizations that had actually been
We've
doing the
been doing
work
the work.
around reparations.
Yes, sir.
And what eventually was passed was a watered down version of that, and so that rather than have the organizations, we were one of them, to appoint members to the commission, the Senate, the Assembly and the governor appointed members to the commission. Be that as it may, it started a year ago. It's ongoing. It's having hearings. We're monitoring it. And Charles's bill was one that spoke to remedies, not a study. Not like we didn't have to prove that we've been enslaved and that it's a crime that has been continuing right through to 2025 and that we do reparations. But it was a remedies bill, and that's what's going on with that. So to the extent that it has garnered participation around people in the state and once more raise the issue of the different forms of reparations that we're entitled to, that's been positive. So that's been one of the things that's been happening. The other thing is that from the time when Biden was elected, we started a campaign around an executive order that the
Oh man, he's
president.
rolling. Roger, you froze.
A lot
I
of
see
people.
him. He's good on this side,
Okay.
Comrade Zaid.
All right, as you were.
Yeah, yeah.
So that Biden should issue an executive order for reparations, a $50 billion down payment, since nothing was going to happen legislatively, and he had the power to do that. But the idea was to get people seeing that this is doable, because people were now familiar with executive orders because they were throwing them out left and right. So that's an ongoing campaign. We're looking at a different scenario, and I know the thing was, now where do we go from now? I'm going to turn it over to the chairman, and then I don't want to hog the time on this.
Well, thank you so much. I think it's really important that this reparation work continues right now, and that what everything the government has done, an objective was to destroy this tendency in our movement that would speak to the question of reparations at all. Many people talk about reparations now. We're opposed to it. When we first start talking about reparations, there are some well-known figures, one of whom had his national, one of his headquarters running for president was in our reparations office in Baltimore, Maryland, and his position was, it's not germane at this time, the reparations question, so he couldn't speak to it. We disrupted Ronald Dellums, the great liberal that everybody's so familiar with, as this great liberal and what have you, and who we saw standing in the Congress crying, and literally crying tears, because when he was 6 years old, his Japanese friend was taken off and put into a concentration camps. And that's why he was supporting reparations for the Japanese. But we talked to him about supporting reparations for African people, and the answer we got from his office was that his basis of support was white liberals there in the Berkeley area, so they wouldn't support the reparations issue. We're talking about the fact that when the military came for us on July 22nd, July 29, 2022, with the raids on us, they used local police. They used local police from St. Petersburg, Florida. They used local police in St. Louis, Missouri. In St. Petersburg, Florida, there's a black mayor who has put forth some kind of reparations program that would take land that the United States government, that the city of St. Petersburg, Florida, took from us. I forgot how many acres, 400 acres or something, where a whole bunch of families live, businesses existed, etc. In fact, I was born in that area. They took it, and now because of the reparations demand, they have claimed that they're going to do this something with reparations, and they're finding a way to try to turn it over to a baseball team as some kind of reparations. In St. Louis, Missouri, they have a reparations issue, a commission, people meeting and talking about reparations, etc. In St. Louis, Missouri, had an African mayor that participated with the police department when they attacked us. They had these meetings, etc. So the reparations demand is something that's really important, but there are sectors who, and I'm glad to see that it's everywhere. In Kansas City, in Kansas, Missouri, there's a great reparations movement there. We've seen incredible significance with the reparations movement. So first thing I want to say is, in talking about where we go from now, from here, part of it, we are there. Part of it, the fact that everybody has to talk about reparations, the fact that even people who are naysayers talking about reparations, that they have to deal with this question across the board. The first question that I'm sure people in like Roger and others were responsible for in the presidential election for Barack Obama. The first question that was raised in this so-called presidential Democratic Party debate was on reparations.
Yes,
And
sir.
Obama came out opposed to reparations. And he gave all the others permission to be opposed to reparations. As an African, he said something about we shouldn't, concentrate on these historical wrongdoings, etc., because of what it's going to mean. Then he left there and went and flopped down on his belly to kiss the feet of some other part of the body to Miami, to Zionist forces there, and promised them, then because people talk about Trump, promised them that he would make Jerusalem the capital for the Zionist state. So this is the kind of stuff
that's before Trump. That's right.
Before Trump. And so we're looking at a colonial question. And effectively, what the struggle against racism has done, it has allowed African people to enter into the process of colonial domination. So now you could people are crying because they got rid of our black generals. Trump got rid of the black generals who were being used to murder people all around the world, etc. And so the struggle against racism opened the door for these Negroes to come in and participate in the colonial project in equality with the white people, with the white colonizers, etc. So I think it's really important to recognize that we're against colonialism. And colonialism is something that's not just ideas in somebody's head. It's an actual relationship that exists between oppressed people and oppressors. And if you say black people are oppressed, then you got to say there's an oppressor. If they are oppressed, then there are oppressors. Where the hell are the oppressors? And if we want to move away from just a racial characterization, then you're looking at colonialism. And it looks racial because if white people created a race, we didn't create that. Colonialism, it came from the colonial project itself. The whole concept of race didn't exist until colonialism. And so that's one of the things that I want to say, but I want to go further and shut up, really. Because we do reparations work, and it was inferred. Like we have created since the 1980s. Right now, we have white people doing reparations work in more than 130 cities in the United States. And sometimes people don't recognize why reparations. You see polling now showing that people in America are more favorable toward reparations than ever before. Part of it is because on the ground, right now in this country, we have 130 some odd cities of white people under our leadership doing reparations work, pushing the reparations demand and raising reparations money. So some people, I think we should push the governments, push the corporations, but the reparations issue is the people's issue, and it gives white people an opportunity to make a self-criticism. And they make a self-criticism by contributing to these economic projects that we have concretely on the ground. That is one of the reasons that they attacked us, because we are building economic institutions, throughout the country, but particularly in St. Louis and some stuff we're doing in South Africa as well. We believe that the reparations issue is a function of the revolution. And that the revolution means the transference of political and economic power to black people. And that we have to be preparing to govern. And the things that we do, we create what we call dual and contending power. So we build our power even while we're living on colonial domination. We're building anti-colonial institutions that feed, clothe, and house ourselves. People say boycott Target. I don't mind that. Boycott Walmart. I don't mind that either. But we build our own Targets, build our own Walmarts as a part of the process of being able to feed, clothe, and house ourselves. Uhuru.
That is icing on the cake, right? Chairman, would you remember as we were talking before we started? And I commended you and Roger both because both of your formations are in the throes of really developing a fresh new generation of legs within your ranks, right? I want to acknowledge your Uhuru co-defendant, Penny Hess, because Penny was the point person for the beginning of that project decades ago. Y'all charted the way for that. a long time ago. And so the fruit that we're seeing, this emerging of these conversations in these multiracial spaces, is the fruit of our own labor, and we need to claim that, right? And to your final point is that yes, we're in a reactionary period in the national stage and in the international stage. That never precludes us from doing what we need to do to grow our bases,
That's it.
right? Grow our bases. So right on, Uhuru, straight ahead,
Straight ahead.
powerful conversation. Let me wind up with some. I put in the chat the links for both organizations. I've also put in the chat the link for the Imam Jamil Action Network. Some other things that are coming up next month is the birth anniversary of Mumia Abu Jamal. And in a few months, Kamal Siddiqui, another one of our Panther political prisoners, is going to come up for parole, and he too has been under some terrible situations with his health, right? And we're going to be supporting all of those efforts very, very intently. Our next Revolutionary Fourth Sunday event will be on the 27th of April, the fourth Sunday in April. Two voices younger than us, right? That I'm very proud of. Melina Abdullah from Black Lives Matter Grassroots, based in LA, and Kamal Franklin of Community Movement Builders. Both have been doing stellar work on the question of political prisoners. And April 27th happens to be the anniversary of the haunting attack by the LA police on Mosque number 27 back in 1962 that contributed to the killing of their beloved treasurer, Ronald Stokes. And the reaction and the response of the nation to that, what the nation did and what the nation didn't do, also marked the beginning of Malcolm ultimately leaving the
Thank
nation.
you.
That's a big
Yeah.
conversation, and we're
Yes.
looking forward to having that. May 19th, locally, we shut down 125th Street every year. I've been doing that for how many years now, Roger?
Oh, 30, so
36
35,
now?
something like, yeah, it's like
Yeah,
this. Yeah, yeah.
right? And the annual pilgrimage to the grave site, this will be the 60th anniversary of that. And that, of course, was conceived by Malcolm's big sister, Ella Little, and maintained faithfully by Baba James Small, who's hugely important to her and to each other's development at that very critical point in time. And of course, there's so many other things that we'll be doing over the course of all of our forces to mark the centennial. I'm going to try and claim unofficially that we're going to reclaim our Freedom Fighters dinner perhaps at the beginning of the Kwanzaa season. We sure that up. We're going to get that out by May 19th, right? And lift that back up. And we have some folks that we want to honor when we do that space, right? So there's a lot to do. Follow our work on Facebook. We have a very international and very young Facebook following from around the world. Africa is the youngest continent in the world, right? We lift up solidarity with the forward motion and the courageous motion in the Sahel, right? And stay tuned. Stay tuned. We
Can
appreciate
I
everybody.
can I just mention
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
on
Absolutely.
April 12th and 13th, the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations will be holding our 9th consecutive electoral campaign school, and which is extremely important because when we attained what was characterized as universal suffrage in this country in 1965. We were supposed to have universal suffrage, but the U.S. government did a lot to neutralize that. They killed Malcolm the same year, 1965. 1968, they killed King with his Poor People's Program, campaign, etc. 1960s, we saw these attacks all over Black Panther Party. The revolution came under fierce assault then, so that by the time we got electoral universal suffrage, they had knocked us out of the box. And so the program that Malcolm stood for and the Panthers stood for and the revolutionaries stood for never made it to the ballot box. People never had an opportunity to debate that. So what we saw was people become Black African people who really became demoralized and dissed the whole election thing because it never spoke to us. It spoke to the Democratic Party. We no longer have our own access. And so what we've done is that we revitalize this and call on African people to come into this and take the revolution into the electoral arena. That's why they attacked us. One of the reasons they attacked us. And so the same year, in 2017, this is where the FBI claims that we became agents of Russia. Well, it was 2014, but 2017 is when we had the first school on the electoral campaign, and we want people to come to that. So go to blackisbackcoalition.org. Blackisbackcoalition.org.
We got it in the chat. We got it on blast.
And so, good people, if you can come to St. Louis if you can. I want you to see St. Louis anyway, because you don't believe me when I tell you what we've done here. And you need to see it with your own eyes. This transformation has happened there, you know. And you need to see Roger.
That was pretty slick the way you
You like that?
one in.
You like that? That's just like a lawyer.
Get him in there. That's right.
That was some lawyer stuff. Yeah. So
by the way, I was supremely proud.
Yeah,
on behalf of our
I really hope
organization.
you can, you know, and we need there's so much we need to do together. And by the way, Roger, this is not going to be a long engagement. You know, we in the process of getting married. I just wanted to say that in terms of D12 and the Uhuru movement, you know, this is
draw closer together. Absolutely.
Yeah, indeed. So
thank you. Very proud. Yeah, thank you, sir. I was very proud to be there last year.
Yes,
because last year, April 12th is the anniversary of Malcolm's seminal message, "The ballot or the bullet."
And right? And we said the ballot and the bullet. Yeah, that's
yes,
that's
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
We lift it up, take those next steps, standing on those shoulders. I was proud to be able to spend the 60th anniversary of that with us in unity and struggle in that space, and it was beautiful to do it. If I can get out there this year, I most certainly will.
We look forward to seeing you, comrades. People need to see. People need to see celebrities like y'all. You understand that? That helps to make it real. Yeah.
Raj, you got any other takeaways? What's coming up?
We got the May 19th, the shutdown 125th Street. We're going to be doing some things before that. We're going to be also participating in a centennial. It's a Malcolm Fanon Lumumba centennial. It's going to be a 2-day thing in May 2nd and 3rd in New York City. One day the Saturday is going to be at the Harlem State Office building. The Friday is going to be probably at one of the schools of CUNY, because we think it's very important. You know, those 3 huge Africans in this
class of
1925, and lessons to be learned to get us through the next 100 years.
Yeah, we want to do something in July on that front too. Let's talk, because we definitely need to be rolling together on that. Absolutely. Well, beautiful conversation, brothers. I'm proud of both of you. You know, I'm at both of your backs, right? Which way forward, straight ahead, forward ever, backwards never.
Yes.
We appreciate everybody coming on through. We say X's and Malcolm is the answer. Stay tuned. Like I said, follow our Facebook page, follow the December 12th Movements webpage, follow the International Uhuru Movements. Pay all of that's right there already on blast, right? And let's carry on the tradition. We'll see y'all in the whirlwind.
Straight ahead. Peace.
Relentless Uhuru.